Okay, thank you very much, and welcome to day 2. I hope everybody had a good sleep, and we're very happy this morning and very honored to have Edi Rama here from Albania. Let me just say one or two things about him. He's, of course, a very unusual, I might say, that politician. He was an artist, and I know this is very important for him. Arts and diplomacy is an issue. And he's been a basketball player. He's been the national team of Albania, so that explains maybe also his appearance to some extent. He was also mayor of Tirana for 10 years, and now he's been the prime minister of Albania very successfully in his 3rd term. And Albania is really doing well, also economically, and we'll ask some questions along those lines. He's, of course, also gone viral, if I may say that, with some recent appearances, which I will not get into. I think the historic appearance in the UN Security Council was one of those issues. There was a joke about Putin also, which the insiders will know. So we're very happy to have the Prime Minister of Albania here this morning. Welcome.
Thank you.
Katherina Reiche is another one of those, we say in German, Grenzgänger. She's been a politician. She was a vice minister, big positions in the parliament, very active, and then moved into industry. She's now the CEO of the largest regional energy and infrastructure provider in Germany, 10,000 employees. Westenergie is the company, and she's also the chairman of the hydrogen board in Germany for a number of years now, which is a big strategy for Germany. So if we have time, we might also get into the hydrogen, and the Prime Minister can respond to that. Welcome, Katherina Reiche.
Thank you.
So I have sort of 3 questions to the Prime Minister, and then we'll go to Katherina. So first question is, yesterday we had Olaf Scholz here, we had Charles Michel here. A lot of talk about geopolitics and multipolar world, which, as you know, is something which is dear to Chancellor Scholz. He says it's not a question of whether we have a multipolar world rather than a bipolar one. It's how to frame it and how to work with it. Edi Rama, Albania in the whole Balkan region, of course, geopolitically is also very, very important. It's not just economically, it's also geopolitically. And so how do you see that situation from the Balkan or Albanian point of view? What does Albania bring to the table, or the Balkan bring to the table, also with a view towards joining the EU in geopolitical terms?
First of all, thank you very much for this honor. And I also had the opportunity to realize that I'm getting old, because
I think I'm older than you.
Entering this building, I remembered that I was here in a delegation long ago when Chancellor Röller was here, and it was in '99. So. Anyhow,
but you were not Prime Minister.
As far as I'm still here, it's okay. Answering to your question, I must say that after the Russian invasion, even the more skeptical or the more distant from the Western Balkans has realized its geopolitical importance. Western Balkan has a very, very heavy history, but is in the heart of Europe, and there is no feasible solution other than fully getting the Western Balkans inside the European Union. And the complexity of the Western Balkans today is another reason why the process of getting the Western Balkans inside should be accelerated, because we are in the middle of many actors. I'm not talking about Albania, because Albania is very, very clear, also because it had the history that taught us a lot about big players, even when others or didn't really know them, like China, or like Russia, that we get to know in the hardest way, because by being always extremely loyal, we have exaggerated in being loyal to very ruthless dictators like Stalin. So we had Mr. Stalin in our boulevard, even after the Russians themselves got rid of him. So Albania is totally 100% oriented towards the Euro-Atlantic community, but in the other countries we have much more Russian presence, Russian influence, and this has to be fully mitigated by getting the Western Balkans more inside the European Union. And what Albania can bring to the European Union, I think we are too small to make a difference, but we are consistent enough in many ways, and I think will be an added value in terms of peace and security.
So this point about accession, you already alluded to that right now. Jean-Michel made an important speech. You were there.
Charles Michel. You want to make it Jean today?
Jean-Michel. And you know, there's a discussion about the timing and the framework. And there's also, this is connected actually to this enlargement debate, which you know very well, of course, on the European side, and discussions which are happening with the heads of states on even treaty change and how to think about finances and the governance of the EU. How do you see that? Are you for a specific date, or I don't want to? As
I said, the Russian aggression has opened the eyes to everyone and has made everyone much more aware of the importance of this process and of the Western Balkans for the European Union. But at the same time, the European Union has its own problems that we know very well, the very difficult process of decision-making, the very heavy influence on the member states of their own domestic politics that sometimes defines also the attitude of the Union, because for every step you need consensus. And sometimes, you know, as a friend of mine put it, we feel that by being a patient of traumatic history and by looking at the European Union as our therapist, we realize that the therapist is also traumatized. And this makes it much more difficult, because we find ourselves in certain moments like helping the therapist. So I don't know about dates, about deadlines, because I am not sure that the European Union has the capacity to set a deadline and then to respect it, because they can be all okay when the moment when the deadline is set, but when they have to respect the deadline, someone might not be okay. So the trauma comes back. And we have made very absolute peace with our mind that we have to do our homework, because at the end of the day, I believe the European Union is the most amazing source of know-how in state building. And if there is a difference, fundamental difference between the countries of the Western Balkans that do not have a tradition of states, of functioning states, and let alone of functioning democracies, and other countries alike in different continents, is that we have the bless to have this European Union that is really a stunning source of know-how in that. So to have the possibility to use this know-how and to make the best out of it, to build a functioning democracy and a functioning state, modern state, for our own children is the goal. Then, are we formally now or tomorrow or after tomorrow members or not, this does not depend only from us. So we know it. But I must also confess that I could feel myself being traumatized by the never-ending process of starting the accession talks, because it was really hard to balance your mind in front of this European Union that would say to us, we want you, and then would say, but we are not ready to talk. It's like, yes, we want to marry, but we are not ready to talk. So how you marry if you can't talk? Now we are talking, and this is very important. Will we marry one day? I'm sure. Will we marry tomorrow? I'm not sure. But the important thing is that our love for Europe and for the European Union is unconditioned. So we can have also a kind of couple effect without being married. It's okay.
Very nice. Unconditional love is already a good prerequisite for marriage.
Exactly.
I think so.
Exactly.
I can tell from personal
And imagine how unconditioned is our love when we see that the other side has a conditioned love, but we don't care. So.
And actually, and then we move on to the economy, that actually the conditions the Commission and the EU is imposing on you even before you join the Commission, the EU, as an outsider, not knowing the details, are rather tough and sometimes even tougher than they have in their own member states. So they're actually asking quite a lot, I think, in terms of that. But that's just a side remark.
But we must,
you know,
but you have to. You are engaging the world starting from this year in this Berlin Forum dialogue, and I assume you want for your guests to be totally open, right? So,
right.
If we are totally open, let's say that, let's say it till the end. Yes, they put a lot of conditions even before marriage, because they want to be sure that they are marrying someone that is aware that the marriage is tough. So it's okay, we have no problem with that. And we also know that for us is a marriage of love, for EU is a marriage of interest. So it's fine.
That's, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So
I hope it works. Okay, very good.
But history, Albanian history shows that works or doesn't work, will be loyal till the end.
Yeah.
So we were the last to leave the Ottoman Empire, even when after the Ottomans themselves left it, and we were the last to leave the communist empire, even after all the communists left it. So we'll be the last to leave the EU empire, even after Germany would have left it.
Okay.
In case, I hope not.
Very good. Okay. Let me move before I skip the question on the economy and bring in Katherina Reiche. Decarbonization is a big issue for the conference, the transitioning. What are the challenges and the opportunities if you look at Albania in terms of helping in this field towards decarbonization?
Thank you for your question and thank you for inviting me. And it's an honor to discuss with you some topics, Prime Minister. But first of all, I really would like to thank you for your brave and stunning response at Moscow at the UN Security Council meeting last week. Your piercing sense of humor was something Moscow couldn't really handle well. So for me, you have been really the man of the day. But
you know, if you don't have heavy weapons, you should have at least humor, no?
Because exactly. And that is something the Russians don't have.
Because with no weapons, no humor, you are finished.
Yeah, so Russians seem to lack of humor. So, but to your question, the Western Balkan states made strong commitments when it comes to climate change, to a green transition. You agreed to the Paris Agreement. You presented first plans on CO2 emissions for different sectors. The whole region is mainly based on coal electricity, but the situation in Albania is much different. So 99% of the power generation drives from hydro, which is good for the CO2 balance, which is sometimes difficult if you face heavy droughts. So then you have to import electricity from outside. What I see is that we see first plans and concrete dates for different sectors to decarbonize. We see developments in regulatory, finance and administrative framework. And if it comes to join the EU, I think it should be a task for the EU to think of their own state aid framework. So you asked Prime Minister if there is too much burden, probably. You are very committed to say we take every burden.
We are committed to take every burden.
I know. But for instance, that the EU requires that Albania has to found an own agency to approve right now, even you're not in, if you require and fulfill every state aid regulation of the EU, I think maybe EU could first think of do some reforms in their state aid. What we will need, for instance, would be like the IRA, an approach on CAPEX and OPEX subsidies. The EU focuses too much on CAPEX, not too much on OPEX. The regulatory framework is really complicated, and the charm of the IRA is that it focuses on ramp up, on scaling industries, and on one goal, and that is the CO2 reduction. So the EU could really take a little bit more of a pragmatic approach, like we see it now in the Balkan countries. A very strength of the region is the interconnected transmission grid. So to develop an integrated energy market could also lower the cost when it comes to transmission. Last comment on this is the potential on renewable energies in the region is really high. So lots of sun, high amount of sunshine hours, potential for wind energy. But also you started to diversify your gas infrastructure. So diversification when it comes to energy supply, I think, is one important step you should focus on, and the EU too.
Yeah, so I think this this energy is a big issue for you. I think you're carbon neutral in electricity because of hydro. It's a big part of your economic package, right? This, I think the state aid point is an important one. That actually, that was the point before you joined the EU, they're already requiring you, if I understood this correctly, to police yourself before you even in. But this is independent. So how do you see this? And is this energy an important part?
Starting from that point, we have seen that not only EU, but every international, let's say, organization, when engages with Albania or countries like us that are so eager to get in, they ask from us not just their maximum, but sometimes a maximum that they can't have themselves. And it's not directly related to subject, but it's somehow an example. When we tried to do some regulatory work on the media online, we were inspired by the German model, and we worked on it. And then when we proposed this, we were attacked for a very authoritarian framework. And when I said, but we have taken it from the German model, they said, but the German model is not democratic. So, because to Germany they cannot say anything, to us they can say everything, and it's very clear. So in this, I think, yes, we have always to deal with conditions that sometimes are unfair because we are not members. So we are asked to do what members are asked, and while members have so much support from the EU in terms of finance, we don't. But anyhow, as I said, unconditional love has its pains. And when it comes to the energy sector, yes, we are blessed on one side because we have been a very isolated country, and this was a curse. But what we inherited is practically an environment where we have practically 100% renewable energy. Yes, there is also the curse in it, because when God doesn't cry for some time, then we suffer the lack of the water to produce the energy, and we have to go to the market, and then we are hit by very high prices. That's why we have entered in a very thorough process of diversification. We are building the two biggest photovoltaic parks in the region. We are now entering also in the wind. So, based on our plan, and also, yes, with some LNG and some transformation we are doing in this direction, although Albania has not yet gas as a source of its own economy, because, as I said, we were totally disconnected from the rest. So we were in our own. We plan to be a net exporter of energy within 2030. And so, adding to this a potential big discovery, we are waiting now for the last test from Shell onshore of a huge resource of oil and gas. This adds to the potential that we might be a country that can be reasonably transformed in a hub of energy in the Western Balkans.
Do you want to say something on the hydrogen part as well? And then I'll ask him about the economy, and if there's time, we'll have one question from the floor or the students. Yes.
So, well, the hydrogen part, I think we see two major strengths of the region, and especially Albania. You mentioned solar and wind potential and your first investments. You have a really capable gas infrastructure, storage, pipeline, terminals. That means these kind of infrastructure could then use in a foreseeable future also for hydrogen production, either blue or green or whatever, because what Europe really needs are large amounts of import. Europe will not cover the future hydrogen demand, which is needed due to heavy industry, hard to abate industries. So we have to diversify potential hydrogen partnerships for the future. And this region could be really a potential partner, because we have existing pipeline. We don't have to think about shipping ammonia or whatever, build new pipelines from Norway to Hamburg. So we have existing infrastructure. And that could be really a case where Europe and the Western Balkan can form a strong alliance. The need in Europe and the demand which can be provided from the Western Balkan states. And I think besides a lot of activities of this government to Australia, Canada and Norway, we should go and look to the Balkans also to form a hydrogen alliance.
Yes, it's part of the strategy. Of course, as you said, is the foreseeable future. Is not something that we can start now, as we started with the other resources. But absolutely, it's part of the foreseeable future, and it's part of our strategy. And again, that's why we always praise our luck, let's say, to be in that part of the world, because again, the European Union is instrumental for the know-how and is instrumental for what we can learn from it, being in directly with the Union or bilaterally with countries like Germany or other allies that can provide to us, as they have done all the way, a very important know-how that otherwise we can't invent.
Okay, let me just now, if there's no question from the floor, just basically say, just turn to the economy. I think Prime Minister Rama has done an excellent job. I think Albania is actually doing very well economically, while other parts of Europe aren't, and you're not even in the EU. So I think this is remarkable. You have a lot of investment, you know, in the tourism sector, in the real estate sector. You're investing in that. You have an agro-tourism business, which is booming, let's say. At the same time, you're also doing social policies, if I understand that correctly, you know, given where you are as a person. So I think this economy is really doing well. And you also had one of your ministers here yesterday, Delina. How do you see the prospects for Albania? Are you worried about all that investment coming in? Are you on good track? Because so far you've done a very good job.
Listen, from my experience, I've learned that the economy never does well, can do only better or worse. In the sense that when you say economy is doing well, then people will hate you. So economy is doing better, and can do much better, and we'll do everything to do better. But now, what we realize very much, and we see with some satisfaction that is being realized also in the level of the European Union, is that this process of integration, that in terms of formalization of memberships can take all the time needed, with all the traumas in the way, cannot be a process that for the candidate countries is all or nothing. So you get all when you are a member, or you get nothing until there. So some new spaces should be open for the candidate countries, and we are fighting for that. And now we will host in few weeks the first summit of the Berlin process outside of the European Union in Tirana, and we are very much looking forward to have the announcement of President von der Leyen about a new growth plan for the region of the European Union, which would imply some additional mechanisms, financial and also in terms of more access to a single market and so on, that would help a lot our economies to do better. I think that knowing very well, at least my country, it is what we should do. Economies that do better. Good will never happen, because nobody will accept that the economy is doing good. But better, yes. And in that sense, we are having a very strong bounce on tourism, as you mentioned. We are having all the necessary optimism to expect a very strong bounce also on energy, and for sure then we will do our best to have a very strong bounce on the digital side, because In my view, the new technology is a bless for countries, for developing countries, because it gives you the once-in-a-life opportunity to make jumps that in the linear progress you would never be able to make. So how in the world we could catch up Germany if the progress was linear? But with the exponential progress that the new technology allows, then you can see yourself in a better position than Germany when it comes to digital solutions. Because having created a perfect state, I would say, or nearly perfect state, without the digital, Germany has such a heavy machine to turn in digital, while we or other countries like us did not have this heavy machine. So it's much easier to introduce solutions that are digital solutions, and that's why we are optimistic for the future, and I remain tragically optimistic for the best.
Thank you.
Very nice. I just thought, since we have maybe one more minute, one other maybe more personal question, which you may have been asked before, your background as an artist, has that helped?
First of all, to set the record straight, you mentioned my background as basketball player. I was basketball player because I was too tall for that Albania.
I see.
And so in that Albania, when they saw two tall guys, they go to basketball. And it was not a democracy that you could say, no, I want to play football. So I played basketball, I would say, I was adding to the centimeters of the team, but not much to the value of the team. I believe. I had the chance that thanks to basketball to get out of the communist Albania, because otherwise you couldn't. You had to be a sportsman playing an international game to get out. Otherwise you couldn't. And so my first visit to Europe before we were free to move was to play here in Germany against your national team, which at that time was not so good as today. So we could stand the punch, although we were beaten. And as artist, yes, I continue. When I entered in this new life of politics, I thought that art was over, but in fact not, because having to participate in the Council of Ministers meeting, I had to keep my sanity, and so while the others were talking big issues, I was drawing, and then the drawings got in their own path, and then became interesting for galleries, and then I discovered that I was drawing all the time in my office. So I do both. I have my people like you in the table. They are talking to me about taxes, about security, about geopolitics, about Germany, and I draw. And it's a way to somehow be much more concentrated. I discovered it, and it's also a way to have, to do both. And to finish, once I had a friend of mine coming to see me, and I was drawing. And suddenly he says, Edi, you don't need to have me here if you are not listening to me. But to explain to him that I listen better when I draw was not a good idea. So I said, okay, sorry. And then I was listening to him. And after a while, he said to me, are you listening to me? I said, no, let me draw to listen to you. So
we are lucky that you don't draw here.
That's
so
right.
I
just took notes. I didn't draw. So that's,
no, here I...
Okay. Okay, we're out of time. Thank you so much, Edi Rama.
Thank you.
And also Katherina Reiche. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great, Edi. Sorry, that's good. You're fine.